Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster on the Nerd Party, home of podcasts such as Nerd Nutshell, Missing Frames, Aggressive Negotiations and Great Shot Kid, amongst many others. I'm your guest host Dallas King, here with Lee Hutchison.
Hey man, how you doing?
Very, very well. Now, normally you would have heard Lee's voice first, but just like an episode of Star Trek where Picard might go off for a cup of tea, Earl Grey hot, he has given me control of the bridge to lead the discussion on today's topic. It's one that affects every single film fan, whether they're a fan of Michael Bay or Michael Mann, David Fincher or David Lynch, Steven Soderbergh or Steven Spielberg, and that is the physical act of going to the cinema. It's something that is always under discussion and something that everyone has an opinion on. With Netflix and streaming seemingly changing the way that people watch movies, coupled with the rising ticket prices, more and more people are starting to watch films at home. But how can we make the experience of going to the cinema a more enjoyable one? We'll discuss our best and worst moments and best and worst movie-going experiences and how we'd like to change it if we can. So you ready for today's topic?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I think we were sitting there earlier in the week thinking, what could we do? We could do this, could do that. And then a certain story seemed to break during the week, which sort of really kick-started this conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm not sure if anyone saw on Twitter, but basically a woman live tweeted her experience of watching I Feel Pretty while sat behind Greta Gerwig in New York, I think it was. And basically Greta Gerwig was quite vocal in her sort of enjoyment and then sort of criticisms of the film. It got a huge reaction on Twitter with people saying, oh my God, I could not sit behind her during a film if she was doing this. But then there was a bit of a sort of people started going against this woman, and it's one that's caused a bit of debate because I fell in line of the woman who was in the wrong was actually not Greta Gerwig, but the woman who spent the entire film live tweeting on her phone because, phones can be annoying, especially with the light. It could distract other people. She claims that, no one was behind her, so therefore it was okay, but I still think it would have been distracting. So where did you fall on this whole debate?
Yeah, same as you. I mean, I am slightly biased. I do love Greta Gerwig. I, like you, do own the t-shirt, the Girls on Top t-shirt for Greta Gerwig, so slightly biased. But I definitely felt the person live tweeting was in the wrong. I mean, I didn't think Greta Gerwig's alleged behaviour was kind of, really appropriate, especially in a cinema, but you sort of expect it in American audiences. They really are terrible. But just the idea of live but the idea of live tweeting someone in the cinema, like, it's an invasion of someone's personal space. It's utterly annoying to, I can understand like someone, laughing along or laughing at a movie can be inappropriate, but to be there, as you say, with the light on, tweeting away, what someone's kind of doing in their personal life, just seemed really odd and creepy. And it was just when some of these articles were coming up from places like AV Club and other places that were like, oh, wow, someone live tweeted Greta Gerwig's reaction to a film. And it's so funny. Whereas like it should be like, these are the websites that constantly make hay out of, how can we improve the cinema going experiences? Mobile phones shouldn't be in cinemas. And it's like, wait, why is this being promoted as like a good thing? It's like both of them come out terribly, but the person on the phone would be someone that I would be more annoyed with in the cinema, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I do realise that we may have lost our American audience now after you said that all American audiences are terrible. I don't think they're terrible. I think they're just more
I think even
passionate
American
and vocal.
Audiences might agree with that.
Well, possibly, but I think they're just more vocal in their appreciation or dissatisfaction with a film at any one time. They will say what they're thinking at the time. But, I think it is this sort of thing that, there's this criticism of both of them, but I think the live tweeting is much more of a problem. And I do remember once, I think I was in a screening all on my own, and I was tempted to live tweet along with it for a laugh. But then I realised, no, because then I'll just be distracted from the film, which is, I think, the biggest issue for me of watching a film at home is the potential distractions around you. And when I want to watch a film, I want to give it my full attention. And just watching something on Netflix at home, there is always that temptation to sort of pick up your phone, and if it's like you've seen an actor in it, you're like, oh, I recognize them from what, and it's like, okay, well, I'll go on IMDb, find out what they're wearing or something like that. Whereas, and I think I saw someone say this week in the back of the article that they said movies are their meditation, and I think I would agree with that. It's just nice to go somewhere and just spend 2 hours, 3 hours, 90 minutes, whatever it is, just purely focused on one thing and just enjoy that thing for that time, not have to think about anything else, not have to worry about anything else. And that's what I love about going to the movies.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, it's nice to go in there, especially if you've got a busy life and day jobs and everything, just to go, right, phones are off, heads off, and just sort of get into the zone of watching a movie. And I think nothing beats it. That's sometimes why I like going, you know what, for a Sunday afternoon, I'm going to be unreachable, I'm going to be in the cinema, and it's just being able to throw yourself into that experience. But so it feels like little things can take you out of it sometimes, that if someone's, you know, in your role or down a bit that's like playing on a phone, it takes you out of it for a few seconds, and you start thinking, well, should I say something? Or, you know what, I'll let them have two shots. If they do go more than that, I'm going to say something. And it's just anything that can kind of disrupt that makes it a slightly frustrating experience.
No, absolutely. This sort of brings me on to another article that came out last week. Apparently, there was a screening at the BFI of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and someone was apparently removed for making noise. But then it was later discovered that apparently that person had autism or Asperger's or something, and there was a whole snafu that came out of this, and that basically someone had said that they want this person removed, and this person was removed, but then. And then there was people who left in solidarity with this person because there was no way that it should have been removed just for laughing or enjoying a film and being slightly vocal about it. And I guess it comes on to this idea of when you're at the screen, you know, what is the correct behaviour? You know, do you have a right to enjoy something in your way, but everyone else should be allowed to enjoy it in the other way? And it's finding that middle ground of how do you create a cinema experience that is enjoyable and, you know, inclusive of everyone, do you think?
Yeah, I think and it can be so difficult as well, where like my line of work is working with individuals with Asperger's, for example, and you know it can be so difficult for individuals like that to kind of understand the social cues and the rules, and it can be difficult for something like that. And I've gone to the cinema with individuals with Asperger's, and it's, you know, the complete silence, but for some they're kind of vocal, a bit more vocal. And I think it can be difficult for you know, if I'm to play sort of devil's advocate with the people here, like it can be challenging because once you're in a cinema, the lights go down, you don't know who's in front of you, behind you, what their story is, what their background is. And I could imagine perhaps in a case where someone's like, oh, someone's been really vocal, that's actually taking out my cinema experience, or that person's been rude, and maybe going up and saying something. But I think the kind of policy in that case should have been someone come in, hey, is everything okay? It's explained, hey, this is what's kind of happening, no problem, and it kind of moves on. It can be so difficult, I think, for staff in that situation. So I can understand that, but I think what happened was just completely unacceptable, and it was like the worst way someone could handle something like that. It was just so disrespectful.
Absolutely. I think now that it sort of gets onto the sort of the staffing side of things, in that, you know, if there is a problem in the screen, you know, who do you go to? I know that a lot of people have, you know, like you said, you had to go up to someone and sort of tell them to turn their phone off. But it's like it's that thing of, is it your responsibility to interrupt your viewing to go and tell someone off, or should the cinema staff be doing more to sort of stop this kind of behaviour? Because I know, like the Alamo Draft House have this whole sort of, you know, no talking, no phone sort of policy, and they will enforce it and take someone out if they break the policy. So, but you know, you've got this problem where at the moment, you know, especially with multiplexes and stuff like that, that they don't have enough staff to go around to effectively deal with it. And sometimes, you know, the ushers and stuff like that, they feel, you mean, do they want to get involved in an argument in the screen? Because, you know, we have seen cases of people sort of getting into fights and stuff like that over stuff like phones and things like that. I remember working in a cinema where this was only a couple of years ago, where a man was kicked in the head during a screening at the cinema for being on his phone during Trainspotting 2. And this, of course, then made the papers the next day and stuff like that. The guy sort of kicked the guy and then ran off. But then it started an interesting debate on the sort of the Facebook page of this newspaper, and that people seemed to be coming out in favor of the guy who did the kicking rather than the kickee. It was like the guy was right to stop this guy being on his phone. Of course, he went about it in a completely over-the-top manner, although with it being Trainspotting 2, you could argue that if Begbie had done, one of these little videos beforehand telling them to stay off the phone, you would have listened to him because he's Begbie. But yeah, it was interesting to see the sort of the fallout from that and where people came in, and the people who like going to the cinema and go to the cinema on a regular basis are absolutely, oh yeah, no, they did the right thing. He should never have been on his phone, blah, blah, blah. But it's the people who maybe go to the cinema maybe once, twice a year or something like that for like a big film like Trainspotting 2. They seem to think that it's okay. I mean, to disclose all the facts, apparently the guy was rather drunk, which leads me into a whole another argument of allowing alcohol into screens, which is something I just don't believe in. But yeah, no, that was quite something. So yeah, where do you fall on that sort of?
Yeah, I remembered that story at the time, and it was quite funny. It was almost one of these ones you could look at and think, oh, it's classic Aberdeen. And I think it's the fact that it happened in what you would call as Aberdeen's art cinema of all places. You would think, why is that going on there? You would maybe expect it at the multiplex, but not that cinema. And I think it was, yeah, like phones are just unacceptable. I have no problem personally pulling up anyone that kind of plays on their phone during the cinema. Like if it happens once, just briefly, like I can totally understand, like at push thinking, right, okay, something's maybe going on there, but you know what, one's enough, I've got you noted and marked. But if I continue to see someone do it again, I will just say, could you please get off your phone, could you please stop playing on your phone, something along those lines. And I think people are sort of embarrassed because they don't know who's probably telling them to do this, so they maybe have this image of like this like Hulk size guy, when in reality I'm just a small weedy guy. And I think, like, yeah, I'll always pull it up, and I've maybe embarrassed my friends once or twice when I've pulled it up, and it's amazing the range of people like you can pull up about it. It can be students, it can be parents, it can be regular cinema go. I don't think it's regular cinema goers, but perhaps people that are a bit more frequent. It can just be such a wide range of people, and I just don't understand why anyone thinks it's acceptable. And I don't think it happens too often, but maybe once every 3 or 4 films, I find that I sometimes have to say something.
Yeah, no, it's a constant plague at the multiplexes and whatever. People just seem to. I don't know why someone would pay, and let's face it, going to the cinema these days is a lot of money, to then not actually pay any attention to the thing that you just purchased a ticket for. I mean, if you want to look at your phone and stuff like that, you can do that outside of a cinema for free. Just go to a coffee shop or something and chat with your mates if that's what you want to do. But I don't understand why people would pay so much money these days to basically not watch a film in a cinema. It's bizarre to me.
I remembered a few years ago they were doing it was like an IMAX day at the cinema, and no, it was actually just another time. What am I talking about? So I went to the cinema, and they were showing like Star Wars Force Awakens in IMAX like months after it came out, just like one weekend again. And I thought, you know what, it's a quiet weekend, weather's terrible, I'm gonna go see it again. There was maybe like 5 or 6 of us in the cinema, and like this young couple, this mum and her son left quite early on, so it was down to like 4 of us, maybe 3 of us. But this guy starts playing on his phone a bit, and I was like, mate, could you just switch the phone off, put it away? And he just looked at me a bit shocked, and then like 2 minutes later he exited the cinema like half an hour in and was never to be seen again. I was like, well, to pay for IMAX, you either have got a cinema card, so you paid about 5-6 quid, or you're a general public person and you've paid like 13-15 quid for an IMAX, and you've literally left after half an hour. And I remember just sitting there thinking, what the hell, what's going on here?
I had something similar once. I've just remembered it. Yeah, that 2 people came into the cinema with suitcases, and then sort of sat down near the front, were on the phones, and I think I actually went up to them and actually said, would you mind turning your phones off? They say, oh, sorry, we're just checking the train times because we're leaving. And they left after like half an hour of the film. They'd paid to basically sit somewhere for half an hour before their train, and they'd come in with their luggage and everything and then left. So they never saw the end of the film. It was bizarre. But I do remember chastising. Sorry, yeah, I was going to say that I chastised someone on the screen once when I was ushering. It was like it was like a really busy screening, and people were still coming in. So I had a torch and trying to show people to the seats. And there was one person on the phone, and you know what, I thought, I'm just going to be really cheeky here. And basically, when they turned on their phone and started looking at it, I turned the torch on them. And they went, what are you doing that for? And I went, oh, it's annoying, isn't it? When you see a light, yeah. And then that stopped me. Yeah, basically exposing them to the whole entire screen by basically going, yeah, it's annoying when you get a light flashing in your eye, so yeah, turn your phone off.
That is a good tactic, and that's something that's missing from having ushers and screens. That I think the only time now that you see anyone come into the screens, Filmhouse is the exception because they've got some ushers, but I think it's like when you go into like, you know, the multiplexes, it's just someone coming in with their UV glasses or whatever to check if no one's pirating Sherlock Gnomes or something like that. You get no other presence.
I think they come round maybe once every like half an hour and just sort of wander in and sort of do a quick scan and then walk out again, basically ticking a box going, yeah, no problems. But, you know, that's not really going to do anything because, I mean, yeah, you've got that, and then you've got sort of, you know, the other big problem that can sometimes have, especially at busy screenings, is allocated seating. And it'd be interesting to get your views on whether you're for or against allocated seating, because, yeah, if it's a busy screening and then someone's in your seat, but then, you know, you don't want to annoy them, so therefore you sit somewhere else, but then you're in the seat that someone else comes in to sit, and it's just this whole domino effect where it all goes wrong, especially in sold-out screenings. But it'd be interesting to see whether you're for or against it.
I'm for it, to be honest. At the beginning, I wasn't. I remember the whole big fuss when I think it was Cineworld that introduced allocating seated again, and people were rioting. There was dedicated Twitter accounts. How dare they introduce allocated seating? And I was at the beginning, I was like, well, I'm not really for it because it's now going to be a pain to bring together all your friends or, you know, such like. And I remembered like thinking, well, it's fine for IMAX or special screenings, but not for like the general public screenings. But in reality, I'm kind of fine with it now. I think for the most part, Edinburgh's pretty good. Like, or maybe it's just a consequence of all these trailers and adverts being so long now that even if you turn up 20 minutes into the screening, like it's probably still showing the 15th car advert. So it kind of works itself out. So, you know, there's once or twice it's been a slight frustration. The film started and there's people kind of coming in looking for their seats or have the phone out trying to find the row. So it's I'm kind of for it in general because I quite like having, right, I booked my seat, I know where me and my pals are all sitting. It kind of works out quite well. So I'm for it. I don't have much of an issue with it. What about yourself?
No, I'm for it because when I worked at an independent cinema, we were basically always sort of allocated seating, so it was just the norm. So, but I don't know if you're the same, but I'm a guy who has like a certain seat in certain screens, so I want to book that seat. And if someone's ever in my seat, I get kind of why someone already booked that one? That's not fair. That's my seat. Because I like to sit in a certain place. I always sit on the aisle, just to the side where the sort of, because I don't mind watching films with people, but I like to go in like a little small row of 3 just above the entrance where there's a bit more legroom and then you're only next to a couple of people rather than like 12. Just in case there's any issues, then I always like to go out. But you know, I'm for it. But I've seen it so many times that, you know, people just they go to the process of booking a seat online. They've chosen their seat, but then they just come in and then sit somewhere completely different. It's like you've just been asked, where would you like to sit? And you've given the person behind the box office or kiosk an answer, and then you've completely ignored it. I don't understand it. But then, you know, you do have that problem of on a really quiet screening. It's like if the usher just puts like, if say if there's like 4 people, but you all end up kind of in the same place and it's like really awkward.
Yeah, I remember the one time, I think it was like a few years ago, I went to an IMAX in Glasgow and it was like Jurassic Park was on. It was like 1 week only or something. I was like, right, I'm going to go along to that. And I hadn't been in the IMAX before, so I booked a different seat than I would in the usual, the Edinburgh IMAX. So I thought, well, I'll kind of be about like 3/4 of the way up in the middle. And I was just sort of in like the seat and I was like, oh, it's just not for me. The cinema's empty. There's like 3 people in the crowd. It's like an 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. No one else is really going to be coming in. The film starts in 5 minutes. So I got up, went towards sort of the back row middle, and someone went, is there a problem? I was like, oh, I'm just going to move to that other seat there if that's okay. Ooh, well, someone else might take it, but what we'll do, we can go print you out another ticket for the back row middle seat. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. So I had to go back to my seat, and then just before the film starts, they came down with the new ticket and went, you can now officially go sit in this seat, where it was just like me and 3 other people watching Jurassic Park, and it was like, did you really need to go to all that effort to give me the allocated seat that I was going to go move into, as opposed to just let me sit wherever I want?
Yeah, no, I know. That's very job's worth of them in order to do that. So yeah, but I guess with something like IMAX or whatever, there is always the chance that, you know, people who go to that are probably more picky about their seats, I guess. But yeah, that was a bit of an overkill on that one, I think. So where do you stand on the issue of food in the cinema screen? Because there was another article that came out this week. I'm not sure if you read it, about over here in the UK, Watchdog went around various cinemas testing their soft drinks, and apparently 20 cinemas within big sort of chains such as Cineworld, View and Odeon had dangerously high levels of bacteria in their ice in the soft drinks. As someone who's worked in a cinema or just visited a cinema, I can't say I'm shocked or surprised at this, but I mean, if they'd, God knows what would have happened if they'd actually tested the hot dogs, for example, which sit out there for like 6 hours. I'm more of a cinema, is it a smuggler, I guess? Yeah. I would normally buy my snacks from outside the cinema, because having worked in a cinema as well, I know the markup on cinema snacks, and it is obscene. So therefore, I would never pay full price in a cinema. So I would just normally go to the shop around the corner, buy some stuff, and then sneak it in my bag. So where do you...
Yeah, correct. That is exactly what I would do. Like, there's a Sainsbury's across the street. I could buy some minstrels for £1, or I could buy them for like £4.50 in the cinema. It's an easy choice. Like, I don't particularly bring in much in the way of food. That I always worry that if I bring in like juice or cola or water or everything, like, I will need to go to the bathroom potentially and miss a chunk of the film, which I don't want to do. So I'm more likely to maybe get a small snack, like a little bag of sweets or something, like here and there, and watch that. Like, I think that's the best way to do it sometimes. Like, at the end of the day, I'm even though I've got my cinema passes, I'm still paying to go see a film, and I could buy some food, but it would be like half the price of my my ticket or my pass for the month, and it just is ridiculous. I couldn't justify that when I could get something cheaper across the street.
No, absolutely, and I'm the same. I mean, these giant buckets of soda or something, it's like, yeah, you have to think about the film that you're going to see. I mean, if you're going to see like Avengers Infinity War, which is like 2.5 hours, you do not need, you know, a gallon of soda or whatever, because you know you're going to need to go probably halfway through the film and then miss some of it. So yeah, no, I normally take a small bottle of like sparkling water or something, and a bag of sweets. And I also wait until like the Pearl and Dean, ba 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 ba, and then that's when I open the thing, because I'm so conscious about making noise as well. But I mean, hot food for me is a no-no. Anything that's going to smell, I don't like. I think that's wrong. I mean, I've seen people take in Nando's before. I've had to confiscate someone who tried to take in a pizza. Very tempted to try and finish it off before they came back out of the film, but no, we did keep it for them. But yeah, no, I mean, it's a thing when people try to take in food. I think someone once told me that someone had tried to take in a full Chinese takeaway. I'd heard that before. So, I mean, I can just imagine like someone taking in like a bucket of KFC and just munching away. It's like, absolutely not.
I have taken in a Nando's before, but I am justified. I must add that.
I'd like to hear your justification.
Yeah. Well, I went to an Avengers Captain America event where it was like, I think it was just before Civil War came out, so it was Captain America, Avengers, Captain America 2, Age of Ultron, and then it was going into Civil War. And the cinema I went to see it in was like, it was, you know, uptown in Edinburgh, not my usual cinema, and they had an offer where it was like, if you're seeing this film, you get like 50% off a Nando's. That'll be between like the second and third film in time for dinner, and like you only had like a 10-minute spell, but they're like, you know what, just bring back your food into the cinema. So I took in like a And I think that you got the food, and you would also get like a half chicken on top of it as well. So no matter if you order like a wrap or a salad or whatever, you would get this half chicken. So I ordered the Caesar salad because I thought that's something light. It's not going to be too heavy. It's not going to be me dipping all my food in. And then I got this half chicken like dropped right on top of this salad, and the smell in the cinema afterwards of all these people having different Nando's, whether like all the peri peri, the chips. It was so surreal, and just trying to eat like a salad in the darkness was quite an experience. And so that's the one and only time I've ever had a Nando's in the cinema.
Like, I'm shocked and stunned by this. A cinema officially sanctioning the eating of Nando's within a... I'm shocked and stunned. I don't know what to say.
It's true.
I never would have allowed it.
I won't name and shame them, but it was good. The fact that I got a half chicken for free I'm not going to complain too much.
I know, yeah. I mean, I guess it's certain foods are okay, I guess, but I know when once at the cinema we sort of revamped our sweetie line, and I basically got rid of Starbursts, or what they used to be called, Opal Fruits or whatever, because they were all individually wrapped sweets. I basically got rid of anything that was individually wrapped because the rustling is also a huge issue, I guess, for some people. I know. I think the BFI in London, they don't really allow any sort of food at all in their screens. It's only drinks and stuff like that. But I know that the rustling can be a bit of an issue for people, and it's made worse when people are trying not to rustle. For some reason, it just seems to amplify the sound, and it makes it much, much louder. Have you had any problems with rustling in the screens?
Yeah, I've had maybe one or two before. I mean, maybe I'm sometimes guilty of it. Like, I think, right, I haven't had an unpack one in a while, whereas, like, just taking the wrapper off slowly. Oh, there's a bit of noise, completely do it, and into the mouth. I don't think you get too much rustlers, because I don't know if, when you go to these shops or whatever beforehand, or if you buy something in the cinema, I don't think many people go for the kind of the wrappered one, because it just seems so convoluted. I think it's more people that are more likely to get something where it's like the M&Ms, where you can just dump your hand in it and just shovel it into your mouth.
I mean, this whole sort of rustling thing kind of came up recently. I mean, with A Quiet Place, there was lots of articles about people who were basically, because the film is so silent, and they became like the characters themselves and were so conscious of making noise on the screen if they were eating snacks and stuff, that basically there were people left with their entire popcorn still full at the end because they were so terrified of making noise. I mean, I guess that's nice, and that some people got a very respectful audience. I was very fortunate to go on like a Friday afternoon when it was quite quiet anyway, so there wasn't too many people, and they were all sort of drawn into the film completely and totally bought into it, and basically didn't make any noise. But I can imagine, like on like a Saturday night or something like that, not everyone will be as lucky.
As I mentioned when we talked about A Quiet Place a few weeks ago, like the biggest issue I had was someone that had brand new shoes that would just squelch every time they moved their feet and stuff. So thankfully that was my pressing concern, and not any food or crisps or anything.
That's brought me on to one of my worst ever movie experiences that you said about shoes. I was unfortunate enough to sit next to someone who basically came in and decided to take off their shoes and their socks for the movie, and I was just like, nope, not having it. And basically went out, told someone. They did nothing about it, so I basically had to move across to the other side of the screen, because I was just like, that's just wrong on so many levels. I don't care if you would do that at home. It's like that thing, did you sort of, like at school and stuff, if someone did something bad, the teacher would always say, would you do that in your own house? If you're like climbing on a chair or something, say, would someone do it at your own house? Well, yes, I would. That's why I'm doing it. It was such a ineffectual argument. Would you do it in your own house? Yeah, that's why I'm doing it. Oh, so yeah, no. But yeah, no, that for me was just like an absolute no-no.
Like, it's just some of the behaviours you get sometimes where it's just like, I think people talking is just the one that annoys me the most. And I think it's just, I just don't understand, like, the element of like just talking away. Like there's certain films where obviously it's somewhat acceptable, where it's like these audience participation movies, but I find screenings or whatever where people try to insert themselves into the film frustrating, where it's like someone's got to make a daft noise, or like, oh, this is so funny. Like, I think one of the things that annoyed me for a little stretch was when you go to some of these like independent cinemas, And they'll show some retro screenings, and some of the things are always a bit dated. But I remember seeing Alien, and someone found it funny when, like, at the end where, like, the Nostromo kind of explodes, and, you know, it's a slightly dated effect, but it's nothing, and, you know, nothing that really to comment on. And someone just like, and then I've seen it before with other films like that, but at the end of the Alien one, this guy had been doing it for, like, quite a period of time. And then at the end, when the lights sort of came up and the credits are rolling, these people turn around and go, what are you doing? Why are you here if you're going to act like that? Like, what's so funny about this explosion? You're just like, oh, just slightly dated. And it's just like these group of, like, line of fellow geeks just berating this guy for, like, why would you behave that way? And I find sometimes, like, behaviour like that, I need to, like, stamp it quite quickly. Like, I remember, like, seeing Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, a couple of years ago. And, like, there's certain things where it is, you know, you can imagine, like, to someone that's maybe not seen it before or whatever, like, it's maybe a bit funny, like how Bones dies at the start of the movie is a bit dramatic, and Kirk and his famous Khan, and this guy just kept doing ironic laughs, like through most of the film quite early on, and I was like, right. And I can never forget actually the words that came out of my mouth, which was like, could you please stop with your ironic laughing, it's really annoying. And it just stopped straight away, and I just thought, we don't need you to insert yourself into this movie that you think it's daft and silly. Like, it's not like it's a Rocky Horror or The Room or whatever, where it's like things like that can be welcome. It's like a matinee screening on a Sunday afternoon for Star Trek 2. Please stop.
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. I think we once showed Halloween, the original Halloween, for a Halloween screening, funnily enough, and it was full of, like, students and stuff like that who'd clearly sort of never really seen it before, or certainly hadn't seen it on the big screen. And yeah, they sort of just laughed at it because to them it wasn't scary. It was, they found it funny instead. And it must be a generational thing, or, you know, they're more content with, you know, the sort of Saws and stuff like that, with more gore heavy sort of horror films these days. But they were just sort of giggling away and stuff like that. And it was like, I was just like sitting there going, sort of Alan Partridge, this country, sort of wanting to wander off. It was just like, I couldn't believe it. But I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, everyone sort of takes, you know, their life and their life experiences into every film that they go and see. So audiences are always going to have different sort of reactions to films. But I guess it's just a shame that sometimes these things happen. But I guess it's that kind of thing where, yeah, you know, people who want to say stuff and things like that, you need the sort of right sort of screening for that. And I guess we could sort of talk about, you know, first release films, and then sort of, because, you know, I've had some amazing ones where it's like, I remember watching United 93 for the first time, and just at the end of it, it was just like everyone was just completely silent, and then like one guy in the back row basically sort of went and everyone was just like, they basically, it was a total agreement of, yeah, that's how I feel as well. And I think we had that recently with the end of Infinity War, where it's just people were just like stunned silence, just like, did that really just happen? Did it just end like that? Oh my God. And I remember like my friend turning to me at the end of Ben Wheatley's kill list and just sort of going to me, what the fuck? And it was just like, yeah, it's just like that kind of reaction is like a good reaction. But, you know, people who just have, or basically not really paying attention or so, or just keep questioning things in films, like turning to someone saying, why are they doing that? Who's that? And stuff like that. It's like, pay attention. If the film's any good, it will tell you the answers to these in a little bit. You don't need all the information right now. Or, you know, if you're confused as to who someone is in Infinity War, just rewatch the previous 18 films before you come along. It's not that difficult. Only takes 38 hours.
No. And then there's a podcast series you can listen to after.
Exactly.
I remembered, like, yeah, when I remember seeing Spotlight and We Need to Talk About Kevin, and it had that same reaction where, like, the audience is just in stunned absolute silence. And I think I saw them on, like, Saturday nights and a Friday night. And I remember just at the end of, say, Spotlight, where it just shows all these different places where, like, child abuse within the Catholic Church has been reported. And it just goes on and on and on. And you're just sitting there thinking, oh my God, your mind is trying to comprehend that level of sexual abuse on a global scale. And I think We Need to Talk About Kevin, I mean, one of the most depressing, brutal ends. Like, I hadn't read the book, but I knew, you know, a basic element of the plot going in. And I was just so stunned by that ending. And I remember just it's like, as soon as a film ends, most people are getting up, jackets on, phones on, whatever, and just the audience were just like sat in like that silence, and you can just feel the tension in the air, and it's so good when you get that moment. I just think it's so rare, and I always appreciate it when it happens.
I know, yes. There's nothing really for me that sort of beats that sort of collective experience where everyone's having the same reaction to a film. Because it's always something to watch something on your own at home or whatever, but to be in a room where everyone is having that same sort of reaction, it's just a great thing. Cinema audiences sometimes can be frustrating, but I always like to watch a horror film like on a Friday night, to get that Friday night sort of audience who are totally into it and sort of leaping out around and screaming and stuff like that. It's that sort of release of nervous energy and stuff like that when there's a scream, and then people sort of kind of laugh around it, or sometimes you're even laughing at the reaction of someone else sort of leaping out their skin and stuff like that. So there's always that kind of thing, which I really like, especially about a new film. But I think, then you've got the other thing where if you're wanting to sort of laugh along and sort of make jokes about a film, then thankfully I guess there is now avenues for that, and it's these sort of sing-along screenings or quote-along screenings and stuff like that. So I think those are the times when you do it, not just at, say, like you would say, a random sort of retro screening of Alien or something like that. It's in an environment somewhere like the Prince Charles in London, which actively sanctions, this is fun, we want you to be involved, we want you to shout out the quotes from the film and stuff like that. So and I guess that the king of all those films has to be The Room, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I just want to, before we go on to that, because like it was just nodding away. When you were talking about that nervous laugh, I remember going to see Sicario, and if people haven't seen it or are about to watch it for the first time ahead of the sequel, it's like the scene at the dinner table, which is just so shocking. And I can remember just the audience being really silent, and there was someone that was just like, they let out an uncomfortable like just like a laugh, and not one of these forced ones, but just that laugh sometimes you get when you've seen something completely shocking. And it just kind of blew me away. And I think like the Prince Charles is so great for these events. And I remember seeing a 70mm screening of Aliens down there one night, and the person behind me was quoting along with the entire movie, and it wasn't that type of screening. I remember going to like a person at one point like, oh, could you just like stop quoting the movie? It's like, it's throwing me off. Like I could quote the entire movie, but I don't need to I don't want to do that, or it's not that. And then they kept kind of doing it for a little bit, and we just looked back at them just like, hey, come on. And then with about 30 minutes to go, the person got up and went to me, well, I hope you enjoy your film then, and then left. And I was like, what have I done wrong here? Why am I the bad guy? And then they just stormed off with 30 minutes to go just because someone told them, could you please just not quote along to the movie?
Well, if you want to sort out bad cinema audience behaviour, the best thing to do is, take off and nuke the site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. Yeah, no, I think, I was just going to say that, I think I've had a one where it was one of those screenings, but the person near me was quoting along with the film, but they were doing the quotes before they happened. So it would be like, just before someone says something, he'd be like, I think it was maybe Anchorman or something, and they thought it was fun to basically like 5 to 10 seconds before the line came along, they would quote that, they go, I love Lamp and stuff like this. But before it was actually happening, I can understand, quoting along with the film, but to do it beforehand, to basically ruin the punchlines, no, that's no fun. That's no fun.
No, absolutely. So, like, I'm curious. Obviously, you've been involved in working in a cinema. What's it like to be on the other side when you've got an event like The Room, for example, which has quite a degree of plastic spoons to pick up? Whatever happens to those plastic spoons?
Well, plastic spoons. Once it took myself and 2 other guys an hour and a half to clean up the spoons from one room screening. So that's basically 4.5 hours of manpower to clean up basically a giant sort of popcorn. Basic popcorn comes in sleeves to cinemas. Sorry to ruin the magic for anyone. It doesn't get freshly popped on the thing. It comes in like sleeves. So a bag of 4 sleeves, which is basically like a metre odd tall by like at least half a metre wide. So that was completely full of spoons. And basically they got kept at the cinema behind a screen for the next screening. When I left, apparently I found out that they'd actually got rid of those plastic spoons, and then this was at the time when The Room finally came back. and therefore they had to basically
my
get a
God.
whole new supply of plastic spoons for people to throw. But yeah, no, I mean, first saw The Room probably, I think it was, might have been 2008 or something like that. It was in like the smallest screen at the cinema, so it was about sort of 60 odd seats, and it had sold out already because it was like they had that cult following. I think we did it like around the same time as we actually did a cult screening of The Human Centipede, which actually sold out as well, which is kind of disgusting. But the film is actually, the first film is actually better than the premise. So it actually was quite funny in a sick kind of way. But anyway, back to The Room. But it sort of grew and grew in Aberdeen. People would talk about it, and then it would move from screen 3 up to screen 2, and then finally screen 1. And this was the point when everyone had spoons. Everyone knew the lines. They were sort of cheering along as the shot moves across the Golden Gate Bridge. They were doing all the lighters were coming on during the sex scenes and stuff like that. And everyone was sort of saying "Hello, Denny," "Bye, Denny," and stuff like this. They were all totally into it, and they would bring new people, and they would be very confused as to what was going on to start off with. But then they would get into it, and then they would bring more people and stuff like that. So I mean, it was always good. I mean, I know it just got re-released recently on DCP, but for me, I mean, there was just something about running the original 35mm print, because I think there was 2 prints in the UK. One basically stays at the Prince Charles the whole time, and the other one sort of was the one that toured around the UK. And just knowing that this was the real print, and always worrying that when it gets to the real changes, because the print had been played so many times, it was pretty battered, and there was always that, ooh, is it gonna work? Is it gonna get through the reel okay? And yeah, no, I mean, those screenings are just they're just something else.
Yeah, I've seen it quite a few times. I've seen it with the Cameo shows it really frequently. So I've seen it with Tommy there, and then I've seen it with Greg there, and then like a few months ago I was down in London, and they were having a residency there for a week. So they were showing The Room and Best Friends Part 1. I think it's called that. Yeah, Best Friends Part 1. And it's this movie where it's like vampires and stuff. So I saw Best Friends on like at midnight on the Friday, because that was the only time I could get a ticket. I left it last minute, and I got a ticket to go see The Room in London. And I was like, oh, I've seen it a few times, but it's like, I've got a night to kill, and it's like Johnny and Mark, aka Tommy and Greg, both together. I was like, oh, I've got to go, and you always can get a picture with them beforehand. So I went and got that. Then I went into the screening, and it's like you get all these people. Like, it's always a question and answer session beforehand, and it's the usual questions you get asked. And this person like came up with them, and it was like immediately obvious that this guy was off to propose to his girlfriend during the Q&A session for The Room. And I was like, oh sweet Jesus! And they were in the same row as me, and I was like, oh no! And I've got it. I'll put it in the show notes. You can find it on the website, where I started recording it because I couldn't believe it. Like, so this person got up on stage, got his girlfriend up, and then proposed to her, and then Tommy was so blessed the marriage, and you were just like, oh my God. And then they just sat down and watched the movie, and there was once or twice I just found myself just like throwing my plastic spoon in his direction, just like, I just couldn't believe that someone proposed during The Room Q&A, and then they watched the movie afterwards, and I couldn't believe it. It was just seemed like the worst idea I'd ever heard. Like, I'm all for like a nice sort of cool movie proposal, I mean, but that was something else.
The Room is not a film that is high on relationships. None of those relationships in The Room end well, so why you would do it at that particular, I guess maybe they met at a room screening or something like that, but yeah, to do it,
who knows, but I think it was just probably for the likes,
just to have that story. But I mean, we could do a whole separate podcast session on the do's and don'ts of Q&As, but yeah, no, I don't. That's for another time, I think. But have you ever been to any sort of sing-along screenings?
I was going to go to a La La Land one once, but I never got round to it. I imagine you have.
I actually went along to the recent one for The Greatest Showman, and I mean, that was something else. I mean, the fact that this film had been out for a month and already had sing-along screenings was basically unheard of, because I mean, sort of Sound of Music and stuff like that has been out for 50 years before it gets this kind of thing. To have it already after a month, and people knew all the words, they were singing along. I mean, the audience in Aberdeen was slightly more reserved than the ones in London that I'd seen. But I mean, there was a drunk sort of hen party there, and they were loving it, absolutely loving it. But yeah, no, it was funny because I mean there was kids sort of singing along. But one thing I noticed is that clearly the CD soundtrack is slightly different from the versions which are used in the film because people got timings wrong at certain issues. So I was like, oh, duly noted. But yeah, no, I mean it was nice to see that kind of audience reaction of people genuinely loving a film and sort of sharing and celebrating in that sort of appreciation for something is just really nice to see.
Yeah, it's just never overly appealed to me, the sing along ones, because I can't imagine myself, like I go to the cinema most of the time myself, and I couldn't even imagine going with some of my friends, knowing their taste, to go along to sort of a sing along ones. Like I couldn't imagine just singing along to whether it's South Park, Moulin Rouge, or whatever, let alone The Greatest Showman. So I'm curious to go along one day on a sort of perverted level to experience it, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I mean, full disclaimer, I did not sing. I was just purely there just to see what other people would do. So but yeah, no, I mean, it can be fun, I guess, if you've got the right film and you're with the right kind of people, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, yeah, it'd be funny if someone had not actually seen the film before and thought they were going to a regular screening, and I don't know what they would have done then. So but I mean, it's that, yeah, sort of collective experience, because I mean, something that we always did at the Belmont was It's a Wonderful Life on Christmas Eve.
Oh yes, I've done that. I've done the Belmont Wonderful Life. It was always class.
Yeah, no, it was always a great thing. It sort of grew and grew again, and to the point where I had to basically delay the screening by doing Christmas quizzes and stuff like this. But I mean, there was always that sort of thing where I can basically predict exactly how people are going to react to that film, and there's always the sort of, when he says at the end, spoilers, but when he sort of is showing how life would have been without him, and he comes back and he says, I want to live, Clarence, I want to live. And then the snow starts to fall and he's back, and then you can start to hear the sniffles starting. And then by the time it gets round to, no man is a failure who has friends and whatever, then it's just full out bawling in the screen. And then there's this massive round of applause at the end because that's always nice to see, when people appreciate the fact that, a cinema is showing something which, is, let's face it, is probably on Channel 4 or BBC at pretty much the same time. But again, they just want that collective nice experience of watching something at Christmas time all together.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw It's a Wonderful Life was at a cinema, and I've seen it. It became a tradition for a wee while of going to go see it sort of in and around Christmas. And I remember the first time I went to see it was at the Cameo. They did it as like a members screening where you would get like a mince pie and a mulled wine, and you would go in. And I remember the first bit of audience participation with that movie was like they were clearly playing it on a DVD. So like the movie started playing, and then you just saw this thing at the bottom, the little triangle, just saying play, and just the audience went, "Hey!" And I was just like, oh, I've never really seen anyone actually do that before in the cinema, so it made me chuckle. So it's slightly different to your Belmont screenings now.
Oh, indeed. I would have been out there like a shot going, what is it? A DVD? Cinemas should not show films on Blu-rays or DVDs, in my opinion. You should show them on DCP, or even better, you should show 35mm. Cinemas were built on 35mm, and they should still show 35mm. That's in my opinion. They shouldn't show it in anything else.
A DVD, but hey, they did it.
Yeah, no, which I guess brings me on to sort of my biggest bugbear, and I think the thing which sort of has ruined more screenings for me than anything else, and which is actually just bad projection. There's nothing that can take you out quicker of a film than a film that's being projected wrong. I've had films that have been in the wrong ratio, so it sort of cuts the tops of people's heads off. I know we've had 3D screenings which have been screening in 2D, so it's all pink and green, and it just doesn't work. I've had audio not work on Close Encounters and stuff. And these are all things that you have to go out and interrupt your viewing to go out and tell someone that you need to get it fixed. But then there's this problem that sometimes the cinemas don't have a trained projectionist on, so therefore they're like, oh, right, okay, we'll get someone on it, and then they don't really know what they're doing. And yeah, I mean, it's just the biggest thing which I can put people off going to the cinema, I guess, when it's not going to be screened correctly. Have you ever had any issues with that?
Yeah, tell me about it. I remembered one time seeing a screening of Aliens, actually. I see Alien and Aliens quite a lot. It seems to be one of these movies that it seems to be just rotating all around the country. And when I'm down in London in a few weeks' time, I always look at what's on at the Prince Charles, and they're doing a 70mm double bill of Alien and Aliens, and I'm like, maybe I'll go see that for like the 80th time. But I remember seeing a screening of it. Maybe it was like 35mm. I can't quite remember. And like the print was pretty bad. But this was like a good few years ago, so it was, I could let it pass. It was like it was still great to see it on a big screen. So it was a bit oversaturated, and it was a bit pink in places. But then at the bit where like in Aliens, where like Sigourney Weaver's character Ripley is there with Newt, and they've got like they're going in the elevator. The top half of the frame was at the bottom, and the bottom half was on the top, and it was like that for a few minutes. And you just see everyone just sort of shuffling their seats, going, "Wait, what's going on here? What's going on here?" And I don't know what it was, but someone must have butchered that print years ago, and that was just part of the consequence of screening it. Was this bizarre thing where it was like you're looking at the bottom to see the top, and then the top to see the bottom, and I have no idea what went on there. And I remembered it just lasted for a good few minutes, and then people started to leave their seats, and then it kind of reverted back to normal, and then they all shuffled back. It was bizarre.
I know exactly. Actually, what that would be. That'd be what they call in the projection terms a rack in the film, where basically one frame of the film will not be the complete. It normally be sort of like 4 perfs within like a one frame of film, and somewhere along the lines it's probably been cut along the way, so it's maybe only 2 or 3, which then means that it appears like you've got 2 frames on within the lens being screened, which all it needs is a projectionist to basically turn it, adjust the racking and the framing on it to fix that. But clearly the projectionist was not in the booth at the time that happened. But I mean, when you're making up a print, you try to look for faults and stuff like that. But I guess, yeah, you're always going to miss things like that. But yeah, I mean, you would think that, a projectionist would be there when it's a 70mm print, because it's quite labour intensive, that sort of thing. But yeah, no, that's what that would have been. So yeah.
Yeah, probably picked the wrong moment to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, one of the worst ones, sort of digital ones that I'd seen was it was a live satellite screening of I think it was an NT Live, A Streetcar Named Desire, where it was screening in scope, but it was shot in flat, so it cut the top and bottom off of the screen. To the point where they actually had a timer countdown, and the timer countdown you could only see half of it. And I went out and said, there's a problem with that. And then they sort of went, oh, I don't know. Oh, yeah, I'll get someone to have a look at it. Still nothing was done. So I went out again and complained. And they basically tried to claim that the problem was coming from London. And I was like, that's absolute nonsense. To do that thing where you basically go, actually, I'm a projectionist, don't you know? And I know that that's wrong. I know it's a simple case of pressing one button on your digital projector to fix that. It got to the point where they did nothing for the whole screening, and I basically at halftime had to take a photo of it and tweet the National Theatre Live Twitter account going, this is, basically I grassed them up and I said that this is not on, which then gets onto the thing that if there is a problem, they'll offer you a voucher at the end for a free film or whatever, but I'm an unlimited card, so therefore I get basically free films all the time, so therefore it's not that much use to me unless I want to bring someone, so I kind of like something else. But I guess that's part of the sort of cinema going experience now, that a lot of people, for them they need to justify whether or not they want to go to like a film, whatever, because it is a lot of money. But I mean, and I know you and myself both have these unlimited cards where basically you pay a certain amount of money per month and you can watch unlimited films. But I know this is actually just kind of only recently coming into America, so I mean they're only sort of just getting this. So I mean, how do you feel about this sort of package and what it means for you being able to go to the cinema?
I love it. I wouldn't trade it for a thing. I think it's one of the best things I've ever had. I always remember being a kid, and I think it was like, I remember Jurassic Park 3 had just come out, and my dad said, if you get to uni, I will pay for you to have a cinema pass. And I was like, oh, wonderful. Well, I ended up paying for it myself, but I love it. I think of all the great movies that I've seen that I perhaps wouldn't have paid to see, and I think it's just so liberating to just be able to go to a cinema, use your card, go see films, and just enjoy it, and to take chances on things, or see a film again and not think, oh, I've already paid to see that. I just think it's one of the most liberating and best things you can give to a film fan. It truly opens your world to films, and I'm sure if I, had to pick and choose my films, there'd be some I'd think, well, I think I'll probably like that one, but I bet it'll be on Netflix soon enough. But it's just that so many options you get, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think I've had mine since about sort of 1999, probably around the sort of time of The Phantom Menace, when I rewatched that film again, maybe about 10 times in the cinema. I don't know why, looking back on it. I think it was just basically to get to the lightsaber fight at the end. But I mean, sort of rewatching films is something you wouldn't be able to do, if you were paying, sort of 10 quid or $20 a time. It allows you to sort of go see films, like you say, that you maybe wouldn't normally go see or would sacrifice ahead of something else, something bigger. So, I mean, smaller films can benefit from it as well, provided the cinema programs them in the first place. But, I mean, I hope it's something that American audiences get to use. I mean, I did think we saw somewhere that apparently you could use it for Avengers Infinity War, this movie pass thing, but you could only go see the film once. You only get one screening per film on this card, which seems a bit harsh because, I mean, I know I've watched several films like Avengers and Dark Knight Rises like multiple times on my Cineworld card just because I could.
Yeah, and that sums it up. Like, I can't really think of any negative to it. It's at 16 quid. I probably would have paid even double that. Like, I hope Cineworld don't listen to this. I would pay double that, and I would still get my money out of it. It's just class.
In terms of like memorable moments, I mean, I remember just during the Raid 2, I remember just there's this amazing sort of fight in a kitchen at the end, and I don't know what came over me, but I basically broke out in applause at the end of that fight. It just sort of was ramping up, and I was just like, ended up almost doing a spontaneous standing ovation for it. I thought it was that good, and then quickly realised that I was the only one doing that, and sort of slowly shuffled back down into my seat. But I don't know, but something like that just completely took over, and I was just like, I just have to applaud the filmmaking on that, even though the filmmaker was not on the screen at the time. I mean, you normally do get like rounds of applause and ovations at film festival screenings and stuff if the filmmaker's there, but for some reason that was just something that happened to me. What about some of yours?
Yeah, like I remember a few years ago I went to see Star Trek 2009 at the Royal Albert Hall with like a live orchestra, and I think it hadn't been too long since Leonard Nimoy passed away, and then when he appeared on the screen, like 20,000 people just like all applauding him, and then at the end as well, when his name appeared up on the screen of like starring Leonard Nimoy, like there was like a huge standing ovation, and it was just like moments like that you don't really get, like 20,000 people seeing a film and loving a film and responding to it. It's just unbelievable. And I'm down in London again in a few weeks' time and seeing Star Trek Beyond in the similar situation. And obviously Anton Yelchin has passed away really since the movie before the movie came out, so it'll be interesting to see the response to him in a kind of movie environment like that as well. I think he'll get a really fitting occasion, and I look forward to applauding and seeing him back on the big screen again.
Yeah, no, I know one of my favorite film moments was seeing Back to the Future at the Edinburgh Film Festival with a live orchestra score, and I mean, that was the first time I'd ever seen a film with a live orchestra score, and I mean, it was just absolutely spectacular to hear Alan Silvestri's score played live. And the moment they even did the moment where during the sort of Earth Angel moment when Marty McFly sort of slightly disappearing, but then sort of suddenly it kicks back in, and then the orchestra kicked back in, and it was just like, oh, this is amazing. I mean, the whole sort of festival hall was just like, it was probably like a good 15-minute standing ovation for the orchestra at the end of that. It was just one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, I went to see that same screening, and I just thought it was really good. Like I've been really lucky. I go to them quite a lot down in London because I just think they're so good. Like I've seen Back to the Future, I saw La La Land here, which was so good, and then down in London I've seen Star Trek Into Darkness, Jurassic Park, Aliens, Interstellar, which was just unbelievable. Like you had Christopher Nolan, Stephen Hawking, Hans Zimmer all there. It was just crazy. It was just like, I loved those. I saw Casino Royale there. The moment the Bond theme kicks in at the end, like huge applause. Like I genuinely think these events with like a live orchestra are just the best. Absolutely love it. It's so good to see like films you love and resonate with you in such a unique setting, and it just blows me every time.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I've seen I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark last year with a live orchestra score, and it was fantastic again. Again, with something like that, I think you have to have seen the film before, because sometimes, depending on the acoustics of where you're watching it, sometimes the dialogue will get lost with the live music will overtake the audio. So you may miss the odd line here and there. So it's always recommended that you've seen the film before, but I don't know who would pay a lot of money to go and see a film they'd never seen before with a live orchestra score in the first place, but who knows? But yeah, no, I mean, I've seen Hans Zimmer live as well, and that was just he wasn't doing it along to the films. He was just playing some of his greatest film music, and that was just an amazing concert as well.
Yeah, like I've seen him obviously perform Interstellar, and I've seen him a couple of times live as well, and he is just such an amazing conductor, and I'm so excited to see. I think I've got like obviously Star Trek Beyond and Star Trek. I'm going to see them both. Well, see that again live in a few weeks' time, and then at the end of the year, Star Wars: A New Hope, which the interview hasn't been released yet, but the guy that's touring America, like conducting the Star Wars music in America, was like, oh yeah, we're going to do Star Wars New Hope, then we're going to dive into Empire later in the year. So I imagine these events, we've all got Star Wars to look forward to in a few months' time. I think it will be the start of a similar live series. So Empire Strikes Back will probably be maybe next year. That'll be something to see live, which will be incredible.
Absolutely, but I will see you there because I have tickets booked for the A New Hope as well in Glasgow. So
it'll be awesome. I think you got my pre-sale code as well. So
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. So have you got any other memorable movie experiences, good or bad?
Yeah, I think I'll pick a good one. Like I could go on about the Albert Hall stuff, but I remember one day, like I went to the Albert Hall. Like I got down to London, like about just before 12 o'clock, and I went to see Casino Royale live at the Albert Hall, which was just incredible. And I was like, I could kind of head back like that night, but I noticed they were doing a Wes Anderson all-nighter at the Prince Charles, so I decided that instead of getting a hotel, I would just do Casino Royale, go to the cinema, spend the night there, then come home. And that was just awesome, and it was very tiring, but it was so worth it to just like basically see all these amazing movies and this amazing experience, and I loved it. And obviously I did a 24-hour Avengers marathon a few years ago, which was cool. So yeah, those type of events where it's like you can like properly invest yourself into sort of a film experience like that.
Yeah, no,
I just love.
Absolutely. I think we've given a lot of praise to the Prince Charles, but their programming is fantastic. I spoke on the last episode when we did the Edgar Wright one about my movie marathon of his work, but I think I forgot to mention the fact that I was dressed as Shaun from Shaun of the Dead, and he actually complimented me on my outfit, but not my accent, because Shaun wasn't actually Scottish. So then he called me the Scottish Shaun, which was very nice. But I think for me, one of my all-time favourite screenings was at the cinema where I worked in Aberdeen, and we did a 35mm screening of Predator. And it was...
Oh, I was at that one.
You were at that one, yeah. That was...
Yeah, I was at that one because I had a really bad toothache that day. And I remember just like coming out of it being like stumbling into the streets in pain, like after trying to watch and enjoy this movie. Yeah, that was a really good one.
It was like an original print, and it was just the audience were totally into it. We had an issue with the air conditioning at that time, so the screen was really hot, but when I introduced it, I basically joked about the fact that it kind of played into the film, and the fact that in Predator, when the weather gets hotter and hotter, that's when the Predator comes out. So it kind of basically got even hotter during the screening, because when you've got 140, where 90% of the people are grown men in their 30s, it got quite hot and quite humid in that screen. But they were all totally into it. There was nearly a standing ovation when that first shot, where Arnie and Carl Weathers sort of flex their biceps together and stuff like this, and the sort of, if it bleeds we can kill it line, all sort of got cheers and stuff like that. And then just the whole sort of the ending with the cheesy end credits where they're all sort of like looking into the camera and like smiling and winking and stuff like that. That for me was what cinema's all about, when you've got a group of people who all love the same film, and you can tell that they all love it, and that just sort of makes the screening so much better for me. And that's what's great about cinema to me.
Yeah, exactly. It's as much as we want peace and quiet sometimes we just want to be able to enjoy the movies that we like properly love and have experienced with like fellow fans, where we're all invested in that experience, whether it's with a live orchestra or a 35mm screening. It's like these are sort of the events like that really stand out. They're like the gig going versions of listening to music.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I guess we've got this sort of going into the modern era with the sort of secret cinemas and stuff like that. As you know, Blade Runner is my favourite film, so I'm going down to do the Blade Runner Secret Cinema in a while. So it'd be interesting to see how that adds to the film screening and just that sort of immersive sort of experience building up to a film screening. So I'm looking forward to that a lot.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing your feedback from that one.
Indeed. So I guess sort of to wrap up, I mean, we've talked about what we love about going to the cinema, but is there anything that you would change if you could like invoke like one rule or two rules that people had to abide by, or just recommendations for what cinemas can do to improve the cinema going experience? What would it be?
Ushers, to kind of that. I think that would cover a lot of any of the bad behaviour. So ushers, and what would my second one be? Yeah, I'll just invest in more ushers, and I think that just sort of like just put people like professionals back in the booths again. And even though it's like a digital print or whatever, and it might not need much of attention, you never know when something will be. And I think it's a lost art. So definitely ushers and projectionists. Absolutely, yeah. No, I totally agree with the projectionists. I think that every cinema should have a member of technical staff on at all times to deal with any issues that may come up. And also, I mean, it means that 35mm could potentially make a comeback in the way that vinyl makes a comeback at the moment. But my other tip would be, as someone who has worked in a cinema for a long, long time, I now always pick up my rubbish at the end of a screening and put it in the bin. These guys have so much stuff to clean up after the screening, so please just do the decent thing and pick up your rubbish at the end of the film and pop it in the bin. Don't just leave your empty cartons strewn on the floor. Don't stamp on your popcorn and grind it into a fine dust onto the carpet or whatever. Just do the decent thing. Imagine if you had to spend half an hour cleaning up sticky Coke all over the Coca-Cola, I should say, all over the floor and stuff like that. So yeah, do these guys a favour. I mean, they've got a tough job, but yeah, just clean up your rubbish. That's the best note I've ever heard to end on a podcast, is clean up after yourself.
Absolutely. It's just the decent thing to do. So Lee, with this wrapping up then, how, if people want to tell you about the sort of their favourite or worst movie-going experiences, where would they be able to find you?
Yeah, you can find me in cinemas all across the country, apparently. And you can also find me on Twitter at Lee_Nostromo. What about yourself? If people wanted to thank you for your noble effort and explaining what actually happens to all these spoons after a room screening, where can people find you? Well,
if like me, you want to fight the good fight, you can find me on Twitter at champcelluloid.com or my film blog at championshipcelluloid.blogspot.com. So I guess that's all from us this time. We'll catch you next time on The Filibuster. See you. Bye-bye.